had 985 apartments and 6 different businesses. You're in the grind, baby. You're in the office 60 hours a week, and I want to jump off the building most days. So triple net was definitely an opportunity to get the freedom.
Andrew Sallee is a real estate investor. He's flipped over 1,000 properties and built nearly 1,000 apartment units before transitioning into a $100 million portfolio of commercial triple net lease properties. You didn't grow up that way. You grew up pretty shitty. You had to overcome that to create this guy that you are now, and that wasn't fucking easy.
Obviously, I told you I didn't want to talk about this, but grew up in trailer parks mainly. Grew up extremely poor, but my parents were very religious, and I was just taught from a very early age that you can't want those nice things in life. I remember I was 15 years old, and my parents just said, you keep chasing this life. And this life of the devil. We are okay with letting you go. We went to court, they signed the paperwork. My parents were so okay to give me up.
How does that feel?
Obviously, I just felt left. But I knew I could make it right if I got good grades, get a good job, buy a car. I bought a Camaro. Buy a motorcycle. I bought a motorcycle. Fuck.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Mentors Podcast. My name is Sean Martin. I am your host. And as always, REAL stands for Real Examples Altering Lives. Today, in studio, on location, I've got a very good friend of mine, my brother from another mother here today. We have not done this dance up till now, but, you know, this guy is a really special guy to me. I don't call people my brothers lightly. I may call you brother in passing, but when I tell you this is my brother from another mother, and I hope we are at each other's funerals giving eulogies. Well, we can't be at each other's, but one of us, whoever goes first, right? Let's keep hitting the gym.
Feelings mutual, my friend.
Welcome to the show, my friend and my business partner, Andrew Sallee. How are you, brother?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
What a day already, and we're just getting started, huh?
Wow, yeah. Hell of a couple of years, hasn't it been?
It has been a couple of years, and, you know, timing's everything.
Timing is everything, but also putting ourselves in the right rooms and right situation, it sure has paid off. Like
yeah,
how we
sure.
met, obviously.
So, I mean, let's start
kind of
with
a funny
that.
story.
I mean, you know, I've been forthright about me having gone to prison and manifesting my life in composition notebooks. And probably the most magical thing that's ever happened to come out of that notebook was our meeting. So in that notebook, I'm going to become a commercial real estate investor, and I'm going to have this amount of money and assets, right? To not share the numbers, but it was a hefty sum of money. And when you and I met, I had happened to have the best year financially of my life. And I also have a partner in the United States government and the IRS who takes 40%.
I do remember that.
All my
partner
money.
that never calls for your opinion, you said.
They just take 40% of all your hard work.
Yeah.
And, you know, listen, now that I've been fortunate enough to make it, the pendulum has swung, and I understand why people who have found success are so staunchly opposed to giving up 40% of the money because they put up all the risk.
Yeah.
They took all those risks. But, you know, then there's the whole, we live in America and the capitalist system allows you and rewards you for those risks. So it's not a complex.
Well, I think it was the norm, too. When we talked in the airport and we put out all those scratch pads, you were like, all of my friends are 7- and 8-figure earners, and they all pay 50% of their income in tax. Right. It was the norm of what you thought was the norm.
If you're from the Northeast,
until one conversation in an airport. Yeah, anybody from New York and California gets it. Totally.
So, yeah, we, again, I set the story up, but at the time, I had just joined the Tony Robbins Platinum Partnership, and I was at my second event, and we were actually at the same first event, my first event. You were ending your year, and this was actually your last event, which was the Platinum Finance event in Sun Valley, Idaho. So I didn't even know where Sun Valley was, but
neither did I. But wherever Tony says go, you just go.
And I don't ski. So, you grew up in Iowa, or no, you grew up in Illinois. You lived in Iowa at the time. And you had a condo in Chicago, and you're just a generous person, very giving. And on the line, Daniel Perez introduces the two of us because our flight's canceled 5 minutes before we're boarding.
Yeah.
That's how you and I meet. We're walking to the line to reschedule the flights. And I remember you just calling your black card company, you prick. And you're like, yeah, you're getting all the information that we're waiting in line to get. You know,
was
us,
nice.
Us commoners.
But it was like like-minded people. We wanted to skip the line for information. And I had the capability of doing that when people were chartering jets. And we were like, maybe we don't need to do that.
Right.
There's a flight first thing in the morning. We can go to my condo and have some fun and get to know each other better. So we were able to get information quicker. And that's why we were like-minded right then and there. We're like, oh, we could be friends.
And, you know, I was like, oh, this guy's really nice. You know, he invited me to stay at his condo. And I'm like, that's mighty white of you. Thanks. But I'm not going to take you up on that offer. I'll call a hotel later. But let's hang out for the day. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, we spend the entire day together. We end up meeting Imran that day.
Yeah.
We end up meeting Michael Gallus that day.
And now Imran's a dear friend. And Michael's a still dear friend.
And we're going to see them in a couple of hours.
All back from that night. That reminds me
all
of that,
from that magical happenstance day of a layover in
a freaking Chicago on a snowstorm. You know what's a funny thing I remember about that too is how, so Sean, your big thing now is it's not money or finance or buildings. We're buying a lot of real estate. We have real estate, but that's not your passion, right? Your passion is helping others and family. And the big key takeaway of that event, and I remember, and I don't even know if you remember this or we've talked about it, but remember we leave the airport after just long time. We go to my condo and you have a tray of fruits from your wife.
My goodness.
And your eyes like almost teared up because you're like just hesitation, cancellation, you know, weather, this, that, and the other. I don't know how his wife pulls it off. Jen is obviously like my sister now, but she gets a delivery to my condo before we even get there. How does that happen? And what a sweet wife. And I just remember you like tearing up about that. Like my wife knows when I'm going through a lot of shit and spending money to be just a better human. And she goes the extra mile. And I think you've gone over the top doing that more now for her and other people. But I just remember that a lot. And that stuck with me.
Oh, you think?
That stuck with me.
I had forgotten about that. My love. Oh, my God. That was amazing.
That stuck with me because I thought.
That's how she trapped me off, too.
I just remember every guy wants that where, you know, I'm going through some stuff my wife's got. I got you. Right. And I just want to make you smile for a minute. And she bought us all like, you know, fruits and cookies and everything for all of us.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
that was awesome.
What a wife.
I totally forgot about that. Oh, man, she's good.
Yeah, you were blessed by that.
Yeah, and I've done everything to try and fuck that up over the years, right? Until finally, recently, when I got, you know, sober and clear on what really matters in my life. And it was after we met. So if we met when we were both drinking years ago.
We'd had a lot of fun, but we wouldn't have impacted lives.
It might have lasted a weekend or two before we were like, this guy's dangerous.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
Holy shit. Yeah, man. So
I do remember that.
You know, God, vibrations, manifestation, energy, to me, it's all one and the same. It's you speak it into existence. And it took 15 years for what I wrote in that notebook to come through in the form of meeting you at an airport. And it still didn't happen. That week, we got to know each other. Well, and I never had an intention of doing business with you or never a thought. Right. There was never a transactional thought. It was just relationship. And heck, I don't know if you remember this, but we even in the airport, I loved what your wife did so much. And I was so envious of that. And we've never talked about this in depth, but we sat in the airport and watched the Dean and Lisa Graziosi doing the relationship coaching. That day. And we were like, we want more of that. Yeah. And, it was, you know, I was going through some girl issues at that time, and you were just trying to be a better dad and a better husband, and that's why you jumped into Tony Platt. And I remember that even in the airport, we were watching that. Now we're friends with Dean and Lisa. Well, I've known Dean forever, but we're both friends, and they're still coaching us on relationships. And it's crazy. If that's not God, I don't know what is. And you know, Dean, after the Derby, he put himself in a social position that apparently wasn't like, you know, something he does all the time. And that woke up that part of him like, oh, I missed this connection. So it's amazing the value that we can add to other people's lives when we're in purpose and we're on the same wavelength. And, you know, now I am very proud to, you know, call you a great friend. And, you know, I have learned things from you. You've been a mentor of sorts to me in the real estate space and in the wealth space and financial space. And I've been fortunate enough to be called your big brother, despite me having a couple less years on you, but just having a different experience, which brings me to, you know, your upbringing. It wasn't good. You know, it's easy to sit here and stare at a guy who's very well-to-do, in great shape, obviously has some means, money, not bad looking, not my type, but, you didn't grow up that way. And you grew up pretty shitty. And I know it's an uncomfortable conversation for you to have, but tell us about where you grew up and as much as you're comfortable sharing about how you grew up, because you had to overcome that to create this guy that you are now. And that wasn't fucking easy.
Obviously I told you I didn't want to talk about this, but I grew up very poor, grew up in trailer parks mainly, as you know, Illinois, Iowa area. Grew up extremely poor, but my parents were very religious. They were very much as wealthy people cannot get into heaven, and wealth is of the devil, and you need to pray for 2 hours a day. And I was just very taught from a very early age that you can't want those nice things in life. And I really had to go through a transformation of learning from other people that, yes, you can. My parents really firmly believed that, a wealthy man can never enter heaven. So it is of the devil. And it's easier to get a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a wealthy man to enter heaven. So until I was about 14, 15 years old, I truly believed that. As a young age, I had an entrepreneurial spirit from either selling rocks door to door or spray painting numbers on curbs to buy Guess jeans or Reebok shoes to find significance. My parents never loved that, but that's okay. They instilled a good work ethic in me and to go after what you wanted. I grew from very much poverty mentality, but really, again, what you're teaching is Mentors Podcast. It was all mentality. My brother lived with my parents until he was in his 41st year. So, he was okay with thinking the way they did. Right. I just was outside of the box a little bit, and I wanted a little bit more.
I think it's the story of, show me, two brothers and, one is always blaming, my parents were alcoholics or my father was an alcoholic and that's the way I am. And
that's why I am.
The successful guy is like, well, my father was an alcoholic and that's why I am this way.
It's so funny because my brother, we say that. I'm like, my parents were very poor and my real dad was an alcoholic. So that's why I am who I am and I don't drink and I work really hard. And my brother says the exact opposite. I'm okay with the life I have. It's my parents' fault. Right. And he kind of has always blamed the parents.
Right. And Dallas is a sweet guy and he's just struggling with that. But it's the glass half full versus glass half empty approach. Where'd you first get that spark? Who was your earliest inspiration to go out and paint fucking rocks to sell to people? What a hustle. That takes a certain spirit and you were only a teenager at the time.
Yeah.
Who was your earliest influence? Can you remember back that far?
So when I was, so that was the age of like 14, 15-ish when, right before you start driving a car and then your other friends get cars. It was really just from a buddy's parents that had some money and their family had wealth and the kid had just a little inspiration, a little drive to do things. So, and I lived in a small town, whether it be Aledo, Illinois or Kelowna, Illinois, but it was honestly a friend's parents that were doing good that was just a hustler. And I was like, I kind of liked that. And I kind of wanted the life that they led. And it wasn't, I'm saying a good or bad life, but they hustled for what they had. And I liked it. And I knew if I want those Reebok shoes, I want those Guess jeans, I got to go detassel and do newspapers and, sell Kirby vacuums door to door and sell rocks door to door. The hustle gave you the nice thing. So it was from a friend's parents.
So, I like to tell the backstory here because there's so much of my audience that comes from humble beginnings. And, sometimes as people of color, Hispanic, Black, where I come from, we tend to think that, white people have it better. And I know that to be not true because I've been around the block and the more people I get to know that are successful, the more I know they had to scrape, and get to where they are and they earned every damn thing they have. And I wanted to show your story because it is to some extent an extreme example of poverty and what you overcame to get through. And, I know there's a lot more uncomfortable stuff there that I know you don't want to get into, and that's fine. But I really do want to know when the light bulb turned on, because you also emancipated yourself at a very early age to get away from some of the, the upbringing that wasn't serving you. Where did you have the presence of mind to do that?
I remember I was 15 years old and my parents just said, you keep chasing this life. And this life of the devil. And it was really just, I wanted a cool car. I wanted the jeans, the shoes, what some of my friends had. And my parents said, you keep chasing the devil, that's who you're going to become. So we are okay with letting you go. My parents, we went to court and my mom and dad were totally fine. They signed the paperwork. We feel you can make it on your own. We're good. We're going to move 4 states away. You are now in a 24-hour window, a legal adult. And it was, it was scary and intimidating, I remember, because my parents were so okay to give me up.
Wow.
Which that's fine. That makes you a stronger, more independent, and you better work twice as hard. I remember at that time I worked at Kmart and I worked at Huckleberry's Pizza, dishwasher, and selling Kirby's, and going to high school. Like my junior year and senior year in high school, if I didn't want to go, I just called in. I was Nurse Betty. Hey, I'm not feeling well, won't be in. I still graduated high school with a 3.6 GPA, so I still went to class almost every day. But the emancipation...
Almost.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't perfect. I'm not saying I was perfect, but I didn't do drugs or alcohol or anything like that. I really worked a lot of hours I still got a nice motorcycle my senior year in high school.
Where'd you stay when you
I got an apartment. So when I got emancipated, I lived with my friend's parents for a little while.
The friends that inspired you to kind
their
of
parents
want more.
they had a pool. Sorry.
Was it in ground or above ground?
It was above ground. But
that's still a damn step up from the trailer park.
That's rich people talk for me. When I was a kid, you wanted to get to know the guy with the above ground pool because he was rich. We didn't really know a lot of people in Kelowna that had the in-ground stuff.
Right.
So, at the age of 20, what do I buy? The house with the in-ground pool because I got something to prove. But anyway, so I just learned from that. And I lived with him for a while. And then I got a roommate on 16th Street in Moline, Illinois, and had a 2-bedroom apartment back then. I was 16. For like $358 a month, I think. And I worked at Kmart down the street. And I signed a lease. I signed a real legitimate, legal and binding lease. And I never saw I lived at that apartment for a couple of years. And I never saw my parents from my junior year of high school till my sophomore year of college. Wow. We didn't speak. We didn't talk. They thought I was chasing the worldly things and worldly treasures. And I should be just reading the Bible for a couple of hours a day. And that was, it helped me like the abrupt thrown into life. Do you know what I mean? You had to make it. You had rent to pay. You had to eat.
How does that feel? Because, these are the people that gave birth to us and they're supposed to protect us and they're supposed to make us feel safe. And here your parents are preaching to you the word of God as they, I think it's a perverse version of the Bible. And a lot of people struggle with that to try to find meaning. And that goes back to, money's the root of all evil. And they obviously believe that. You obviously did not.
No.
But how did you feel? Because, they're 15 and they're essentially giving you up.
Yeah.
Did you find comfort and maybe some affection that you didn't have with the other family? Or is that something you just kind of struggled with?
No, I struggled with it. Obviously, I just felt left.
Yeah.
There's really no other feeling that. No, the friends were just nice to help me out and take me in for a while. But no, there's only one way to feel, and that's left because it was, it was easy. It was easy. I remember going to the courthouse in Kelowna. It is what it is. I just got through it. And I worked and I felt alone. Yeah, but I knew I could make it right if I got good grades, because I think I was always still chasing my mom's approval, even though she was, moved away. But I just kind of cooked me in the butt to even do better. Like, hey, get good grades, get a good job, buy a car. I bought a Camaro. Buy a motorcycle. I bought a motorcycle. They actually, they came. I remember they came like two and a half years later, and they stayed with me in my apartment for a while. And it was pretty cool to be able to pretty much house your parents. Right. And they needed a couple of bucks at that time. But yeah, of course it's lonely, but you got to just grow up fast.
Yeah, you were forced to grow up a little faster than you should have. And, listen, we can't. Yeah. We're going to blame them for the bad. We got to blame them for the good.
My mom did the best she could. My dad did the best they could.
What she knew how to do.
What she knew how to do.
And I can't imagine the abuse or the bullshit she went through growing up for her to.
Yeah, and I don't know what. And my mom, I think, had a little bipolarness in her, but that she would never just get it checked out or fixed. Because she would hate you one day. And one day she tried to stab me. And one day she ran me over with her car. And the next day she loved me like crazy. And I honestly was just chasing her approval. Right. So to be honest, at those times, I really wanted to get that approval. And I never knew that until I did a lot of inner work in the last 18 months.
Yeah. And I know that's why God put us together.
Yeah, you're good at that stuff.
Yeah. And I had a lot of love growing up. You didn't, obviously, or not even remotely healthy kind of love, like a crazy love. But again, it's why you are who you are, and finding the ability to forgive, not ever forget, but just use it for fuel.
Yeah, it was really fuel, I think. I mean, I thank God they raised me right. I still think, and people make fun of me, Like my mom, literally, like my mom burned all my baby pictures. She got mad at me when I was in my mid-20s and burned every childhood picture of mine, every frame, every report card are burned in my driveway at my house because I wouldn't give them X amount of dollars. My parents were kind of mean, but I look back now that she's passed, and I thank God for that. They created good habits in me. Like I don't leave dirty dishes in the sink. I make my bed they seem like trivial, but I'm OCD when it comes to that because my mom taught me those good habits. You can outwork everyone if you're in a tough spot. And I've learned from that. So I'm kind of thankful for a lot of things they instilled with me.
Yeah. And listen, all we can do is take the good lessons because, there's no point in holding on to the bad. But I mean, obviously it moves you to tears for a reason because human beings want connection and they want it. And, again, you may get now what you didn't get then because you're ready to receive it. And, I've always kind of struggled with trying to show you because you chase the stuff and the things. I'm like, just slow down, bro. You've got everything you need right now. Maybe we should just take some time to focus on you and what makes you smile. And you've done an amazing job since I've known you in looking inside and just growing as a person and still growing.
Yeah.
Your money, you know how to make money. You've been fucking doing it since you were a kid.
Yeah.
So
it's the easy part sometimes. It is the mentality and the mind shift. Like you're obviously coaching me on that. The mentality and mind shift, you have it. Avoiding, tough conversations. You run into tough conversations. I run away from the wall because I remember my mom was always a confrontational situation. So I run away from that. I can avoid that. Yeah. And I got to work on that.
Well, you are willing to do the work, and it's no doubt hard for you. So I honor you for looking at the part of yourself you kind of want to forget, and you've swept under the rug for so long.
Yeah, and that is crazy. You really need to do a lot of inner work. I would agree with that, where you do sweep it under the rug, and you may not notice it for a decade.
And it shows up in your life and the decisions you make.
Absolutely.
And it hampers you until you address it.
And what you tell me all the time, I agree, and I'm trying to learn it. You do deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're at odds with all the things you've accomplished and whether or not you truly deserve it because of, how you were brought up.
And that's tough. And I get what you say that, and I appreciate that. Obviously, you're my brother in life. You're, my best friend in the world right now. I would say, and it's crazy too, you have these friends you've had forever. We met less than 2 years and we talk every day. Right. And you're mentoring me and coaching me on things, and I'm talking to you about things, but you don't know why God puts people in your life. But yeah, I remember I always was chasing approval because my mom just wouldn't give it. And she just wouldn't give it. And, you do end up chasing that. I'm 48. I shouldn't have mommy issues, but we do. we got something going on, but we just got to dive in there and get somebody like you. I was fortunate. No doubt God put me in that line and you in that line.
If you're an entrepreneur struggling with your internal self, I'm your guy.
Yeah, I tell you, and I really
give it away, brother.
I've struggled with confidence, and you exude it. So I'm trying to learn that as well.
I've built the guy that you've seen, and if you follow social, you've seen me, go from whatever I was to wherever I am, and it's a fraction of where I'm going to be. And I love that we're on this journey together. So let's talk about your early business career. After selling rocks and Kirby vacuums, and I know you started out in real estate at what age? When did you get into real estate?
So I started out in real estate at 20, I was 26 and a half.
Okay.
And I was selling windows, siding, and doors for a home improvement company.
So you were a salesperson? Before going into real estate?
Yep, salesperson. Started at the age of 20 selling windows. So I was a telemarketer for the company, and then they gave me an opportunity to sell windows. Door to door. So imagine selling door to door vinyl windows for almost $1,000 a window. That job, it was not easy in 1997.
Yeah.
But provided me, a nice 6-figure income to do what I needed to do. But I didn't get into real estate until I was 27. From 20 to 27, I was making good money, but I was spending it on lifestyle. At 27, it said, how much money do you make while you sleep? And from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Then I thought, boy, I'm making good money. If I have one skydive go bad, one ski trip go bad, my incomes go zero, the house, the toys all go away. So that's when I got into real estate, was just to make passive income, really enough. Back then, I remember my mortgage was $3,195. I just wanted to have enough cash flow to cover that mortgage payment, and then enough cash flow to cover the Jeep payment, and then enough cash flow to cover the Corvette.
It's crazy how we just keep adding expenses as we make money, especially when we're not taught financial literacy.
For sure.
So I know the big book for you was Rich Dad Poor Dad, and one of your early mentors put that book in your hand. But you mentioned skydiving and all that. When did you start realizing that you had a propensity for danger? When did you start chasing that rush? Because I want you to share that part of your story, and then we'll get back to the real estate. But you are an accomplished skydiver. You are a pilot.
I have...
What else you got there that the world needs to know about?
I have 2,300 skydives. It probably seems like a lot.
2,300.
It probably seems like a lot, but it's really not in the world of skydiving. I started, my first skydive was in Hawaii on vacation. So I'd never traveled. I'd never really been in an airplane when I was 20. Okay. So I had that killer year. I made $102,000. I'm turning 21. So I go to Hawaii for 2.5 weeks, and I go to Daytona Beach for 2.5 weeks. I make a skydive, and I was just, it was a rush that I just loved.
Yeah.
I had always been into motorcycles, so I loved those. But then I got into skydiving. So yeah, I have 2,300 skydives. I got my pilot's license the same year. So 21, I'm a licensed skydiver and a licensed, I did scuba diving. I have 92 scuba dives. I have 945 hours flying planes from single engine, twin engine, retractable gear, IFR, VFR, all that. So I've been flying since I was 20. I've been skydiving since I was 20. I've done as many as 27 skydives in one day. Rock climbing, rappelling off buildings, shark dive. You know, I love anything that has a little bit of a rush, I guess. And that's probably why I'm an entrepreneur. I have the ability to take some risk.
Yeah.
I'm okay with risk.
It's safe to say.
And over the years, you obviously take a little less risk every year. But yeah, I just knew that I love the extreme sports.
Now you've got a slow, boring portfolio, as you proudly say, which isn't risky.
Slow and boring base hits.
You're not the risky guy.
Not like I used to be.
You skydive?
It was over 2 years. So it was 2022. I made about 50 skydives that year. So 2022, I haven't jumped in 2 years, 2.5 years.
What stopped you?
You know, how would I say it? I just don't have the crazy passion for it. It's not that I'm worried about the risk a ton, because believe it or not, skydiving is not as dangerous as you may think it is. I have a couple of rigs that are pretty safe.
I just made a connection. When did you stop drinking?
About 4.5 years ago.
Okay, so you had already sobered up and
that
still
up.
Okay, so those two are connected.
Yeah.
And you've got some wild stories, to say the least. I want to dive into some of those skydiving stories, because they really are a metaphor, an actually literal example of facing down your fears and still moving forward. You have some horror stories.
Oh, you're probably talking about. I know what you're referring to.
Shoot failures. Let's start with that, right? 2,300
skydives. Six. So in the defense of skydiving, this happens. We were pretty advanced skydivers at this time. But yeah, over my career, God must have a plan. But yes, over my career, I've had 6 parachutes not work. So 5 didn't work, and 1 was an intentional. I had a best friend at that time pass away, and we did an ash dive, and we covered the sky with his ashes after he passed. So I did an intentional cutaway of my canopy. That's what you do in skydiving. You do that for your teammate.
So you deployed your chute.
It was totally good.
You
waved to the family, spread the ashes, and then cut away.
You cut away your chute.
Go back into free fall.
And went back into your backup, your reserve.
Reserve, yeah. So I've had 6 parachutes. Obviously, I've rode the reserve 6 different times, and I've crashed an airplane twice. I've wrecked on a motorcycle at 130 plus mile an hour with, shorts and a t-shirt, no helmet. So I've done some pretty crazy stuff.
Now, do you get right back up? Because I have boys that have rode motorcycles and they have accidents, and, they also swear by, you got to get back on as soon as possible, or, you'll never ride the same. You witnessed a friend not pull a chute one time.
Boy, he always brings up this stuff. Okay, so I get into skydiving, and I like it. And then my best friend at the time is Scott Watkins. I get back from Hawaii, make the trip. So we join this skydiving club in Geneseo, Illinois. And on like our 12th jump, he jumps out and stuff goes bad. So he hits, and I'm still in the plane. So his main chute went out, and then his reserve, and it entangled, and then both chutes went like that. So it downplaned. His body was in the middle, and you got 2 parachutes, and I'm watching this. I'm at 10,000 feet. I'm in a Cessna 182 small plane. I'm with my coach at the time, and I watch him hit. And my coach says, you have two options. You can skydive right now, and you'll probably be a pretty good skydiver and be able to handle the sport. You'll love it, and you'll be proud of yourself. Or if you don't jump, you'll never jump again. You'll never do this sport. And at this time, I'm in love with this sport. I don't know what happened, but I watched it. I watched everything. So I jumped. I absolutely jumped after the plane after my best friend hit. And then I landed, ran over to him, and we got helicoptered to Peoria, and he broke his back in many different places. But thank God he is okay now. He's okay, but he went through a lot, and I was there for him the next 18 months. But anyway, yeah, the coach was like, you have two options. Jump, and you'll be a great skydiver, and you do this forever, or don't jump, and you will never probably fly in a plane again or jump out of one.
So that's a lesson of conquering your fears, right? And your coach was eloquent enough to say,
yeah, give you two options.
If you jump now or you never jump again.
Yep.
I don't know that necessarily is true or not.
No.
That's dependent on the person, but it
everybody's
speaks to
different. But you have 3 seconds to make that decision.
To take risk.
Right.
How important do you think the belief, or how important do you think your upbringing of coming from nothing has been in your ability to take these huge risks? Like, do you ever feel like, fuck it, if I lose it all, I'll build it back? Obviously, we don't want to, but there's a certain level of recklessness. So just like with these things that you undertake that give you this ultimate rush, there's a saying, if you're not truly living until you're almost dying.
Yeah.
You're like balls to the wall on the jet ski, motorcycle, jumping out of a plane. Yes. Any of those things gives you a rush that cannot be duplicated by drugs, alcohol, sex, or anything else. And if you've ever tried to say, oh yeah, this is better than that rush, you've never done those things.
Right.
Because anybody who has done those things knows that rush is
irreplaceable,
second to none. Does doing deals give you a rush early in your career? Is there a propensity for risk? Because obviously you have something that most people don't in order to be able to take such blind risk on yourself, more importantly.
And I say that comes down to, just the confidence in yourself. The only reason I have the confidence in myself in the business, or whether it's be apartments or the half a dozen businesses I've created or the strip malls or whatever it may be, the only way I could say I have the guts to do that is the confidence that I've made some of the dumbest decisions and the dumbest acquisitions. I've made literally every mistake you can make because it just is a silly, silly man. But anyway, I've done those mistakes and I've turned them around. Most of those I've been able to flip them. Now, have I had losses? Of course I have. But I've taken on some big, big challenges. I remember buying a 70-plex apartment complex when I was, early 30s that was in a bankruptcy foreclosure. And we turned it, flipped it, and made some money. So I guess the confidence today, I'm definitely less risk today. I'm more risk adverse today. Risk is not on my plate as much as it was. Because the numbers are bigger too, and there's more bodies and people involved. But yeah, I guess the confidence just really comes from the ability of taking something from a failure to a win. And especially with running companies and the roofing company that I did, but apartments as well.
So apartments was your, you started out in sales and windows and siding, circling back to your career in real estate. Your first dive is into apartments and residential real estate, correct? Yeah,
I just started small. So when I was 27, my first deal was my parents owned a home. They just don't like the mortgage thing. Like I was fortunate enough when I got into real estate was to really, retire my mom. She didn't want to work, so I put her on salary. My dad's still on salary today. So that's a big accomplishment every young entrepreneur knew, and you know that as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest success. Once you earn your first million, first thing is retire your parents or pay off their mortgage.
Right.
So I think being able to go through those challenges, you learn to take some risk because you want to help others. It's not always about you. So my first deal was just helping my parents out. They didn't want to own the home and they didn't like that bank guy. So I bought their house and I rented it out. So it was a single family home and then a duplex, then a fourplex, then a sixplex, then a 10plex, then a 40plex, a 60plex, 80plex. It just kind of grow and escalate from there. But I did it all 100% just on my own and winging it and putting it together. And, small banks in Iowa that worked with me and at that time lent me 80% of the money. and had faith in me. And I owned and operated all those apartments for 985 apartments from 2002 to 2018. So for 16 years, I own and operate my own 985 apartments.
So you make the shift, right? You've built this on your own. I know you've had partners here and there along the way. Dean Graciosi being, one of your early partners in the residential game. But you've built it on your own for the most part. You've taken on and assumed a lot of the debt, the risk. You're a risk taker, but you're also believing in yourself. So it's funny when you say, I exude this confidence, but your actions speak very differently about your own success. If you decide
good point. I didn't think about that, but you're correct.
Well,
outwardly it exuded. You're right. Good point.
You're just not looking at it that way, brother. And I think most people don't. My new saying is, the only time you should be looking in the rearview mirror is to see how far you've come. And people are just so fucking focused on what they want to get, what they haven't gotten, what that guy has. Look at what that guy has or that girl has. I want that, I want that, I want that. You don't look back and say, well, damn, look at all the things I've accomplished.
Literally, me and Josh just had that conversation in the hallway. Like, Scott obviously is just huge, obviously, a hero, mentor, just godly man, family man. But he said one line that we talked about yesterday, like a new decade starts, from 2020 and now it's 2025. What have you done in 20 to 2025? How is your decade going? And I've had some big failures in the last couple of years. I've really, messed up some things and had some failures. I was reaching for big challenges, big goals, and I failed a couple of times. And now I thank God for those failures because I've learned so much. But man, Scott, I could have flown out to Vegas for this 2 minutes of his speech was like, really look where you're at 2020, look at 2025, and what have you done, and what are you on pace to hit by 2030? Because I can very easily get into that negative mindset because we're obviously in masterminds with groups that are, like I say, is I'm the poorest, brokest guy in the room, just like you may say. We're in with some big players and it's easy to get sucked into, man, they have this, they have that, and I want it, and forget about the accomplishments that we've done. They may not be as big as theirs, but they're still good accomplishments that we forget to mention.
Well, totally. It's all relative, right? Because I equate, and why I call you my brother from another is because we started here. They may have started here, just having two somewhat healthy parents in the house. Yeah. That's a big difference than climbing out of a fucking hole of dysfunction, my friend. Or a single mom in the projects during the 1990s. So again, if we look at how far we've come, right? Are we measuring the starting line? And sometimes we're not. So it's perspective.
And I get so hung up on that. As you know, I get in I just started with Dean Graziosi got me into Dan Sullivan's strategic coach in 2008. And I was doing coaching with him. And it's he calls it the gap. You're so focused on what they have and what you have in that gap. And it's hard to get out of that. And here's the crazy thing, man. When I was 18 years old, and I'm tough because I'm in a tough spot in my life right now, I set a goal and I wrote it down from the age of 20 to now. I write down, what did you make? What did you save? What did you invest? What did you reward yourself with? I got columns. What did you give to God, tithe, church, all that. And I was like, I said to myself, I would hit a 7-figure net worth in my 20s, which I hit, no problem. I hit an 8-figure net worth in my 30s. I hit, no problem. Well, I wanted to hit 9-figure net worth by the time I earned 50. And I'm behind the 8 ball right now. So I'm slacking. So I'm in massive gap. But I just got to stop that.
Is it though massive?
Be grateful.
I think Josh just came on and he said, for the first 9 months of his real estate career, it was like a rocket ship just waiting to take off. When the smoke's coming out and that momentum's building and then the rocket takes off and then it just fucking shoots out into space. And I know from the outside looking in that that's the part of your life you're in now. It's this phase where you feel like you're spinning your wheels, but you're actually building momentum. And when you take your own foot off the brake, because inadvertently your foot's on the brake and the gas at the same time,
I agree.
You're going to take right off. And I can't wait to see how that's going to impact both of us. And again, we're partners in real estate deals. And I ask myself sometimes, am I so invested in Andrew because, there's money on the line, or am I invested in Andrew because of the similarities and the respect that I have for how far you've come? And I've genuinely grown to love you. And I don't use that word lightly.
I know, back at you, brother.
And I think, we need each other from a fucking airport.
Because I can tell you it ain't about the money for you and it ain't about the money for me.
Yeah, it's not. I know how to make money.
Yeah, I know how to make money. You know how to make money. That's the easiest part. But the mindset and now our goal to to just impact others. I mean, you really dug into that, obviously. That's your unique ability.
It takes doing the thing and realizing how it makes you feel and being able to bring things out of people that, I have this gift that I didn't see as a gift for the longest time.
Right.
You also have that gift. So you are a big reason for me being in like this amazing room with Dean and, Tony and all these other amazing people, Chad and Nick.
Oh my God.
John and,
I'm still pinching myself, like Josh said, like Pace and Dan and, I've known Dean since
Drummond,
2008.
who's off about to hike Denali right now.
It's crazy. We're so blessed, so grateful. I don't know how we got in that room, but obviously it was Dean Graziosi, but we put the work in.
Well, we got in that room because of you.
Well, we got in that room because you said yes to platinum too.
Yeah.
You said yes to platinum. You invested a very large check, and then I said yes. I remember talking to Dean in my kitchen in my Bettendorf home going, I think I want to do, I drove to Madison to meet this real estate guy. I didn't know what platinum was. And he's like, you ever thought about platinum? I go, well, I know Dean. I'll text him. I text him right there. I go, should I be in platinum? He goes, well, that's a decision you have to make. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but if Dean says jump, you say how high. I value his opinion. Whatever he says, I believe him. He wholeheartedly wants nothing from no one. And he's like, do it. But if you do it, go all out. Right. And I went all out. I did 13 events in 12 months with Tony Robbins, and platinum was a game changer. And it all paid for just by meeting you, obviously. But we both went all out. And then we went from that room to another room, obviously. Right. And I don't know what got us. I don't. Point. Yeah. Now Commercial Academy. We have Scott Shield. Oh my God, Scott Shield. And now we're both in these two masterminds, and they're our only focus. But I think, I've been very education driven since 2021. I've been called the mastermind addict. But we've really kind of sliced them up, diced them, played with all of them.
We have that great kind of personality.
Yeah, they're all
also,
great.
We can't miss the edge. We got a lot out of being the edge as well. And just leaning into our leadership abilities.
Oh God.
Some of the demons that were haunting us. The deep work.
Yeah.
So again, being in those rooms.
Oh my God. Proximity is definitely power.
When was so you said 2008 was your first mastermind, Dan Sullivan?
Yeah, I remember because it was, I think it was $25,000 a year. And that was all the money in the world. And you had to get approved. You had to send your tax returns in. You had to prove that you had 3 $500,000 plus incomes in a year, $500,000 incomes on your tax return. So I remember going to my accountant. I'm like, I got to get approved to go into this mastermind. He goes, are you an idiot? And you have to write him a check.
You got to pay.
And you got to go to Canada every 90 days. But Dean said, do it. So do it. Oh my God, thank you, Lord Dean Graziosi. Because that was an amazing group, and finding your unique ability and your largest paycheck and the gap and everything. Dan Sullivan's amazing.
I heard the coolest story. So I didn't come into Dan Sullivan's ecosystem until later with Who Not How and Gap in the Gain and 2X is easy. 10X is easy. And then 2X, all amazing. Simple reads for anybody out there. Those are 3 good ones. Dan Sullivan.
Yes,
Strategic Coach is his coaching program, Mastermind, which you just talked about. And I heard that, in one of his audiobooks, that Tom Brady's father was a student.
Yes.
At Strategic Coach. Mm-hmm. And nobody's ever heard of Tom Brady's father. And obviously, if he's in that group, he was making a great living. But, he then fathered the GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, think about it.
Football.
He's a coach. He's coaching his son. I mean, those guys.
And all great athletes in the Brady family. Yeah. So again, it speaks to progress, generational progress. The whole point of this show is to paint the picture of what success looks like. And you may not even accomplish it in your lifetime, but let's say you come from the shit, right? Your family was screwed up and dysfunctional, and now you're married and you have children, and you don't feel like it's good or it's where you want it to be, but you're creating children that are now brought up in a healthier environment. So therefore, you may not see the fruits of your labor until you're a grandparent, or you birth the GOAT of football, or you birth the kid that can go out and get into a room like Strategic Coach because they have to be making $500,000. So I think patience is an underrated superpower.
Dang, you nailed that.
Patience is
That's hard to learn.
The most underrated thing. Any young person that now asks me for advice, I lead with, I'm going to tell you something no one else is probably ever going to tell you, because they're going to tell you business acumen, work hard, get up early, cold plunge, whatever fucking information is popular. But nobody preaches patience.
Yeah.
I preach it to you.
and I'm trying to learn. It's so hard, with like the Nick Sansones and the Chads and the Deans and all this group and the Pace and the Dan. And and Josh. Oh my God, it's so easy to get in that gap. But I got to remember, we're really addicted to growth and growing in the right way. And I got to keep reminding myself, we're all reading the same book. They're just a couple of chapters ahead of me. And I've got to remind myself that because these guys are really giving. I mean, I've never seen a group that gives more. And I got to give more to the couple of chapters behind me because we're all reading the same book. They're just on, they're on chapter 9 and I'm on chapter 4.
Yeah.
And I need to remember too, like you're doing so much now, is help that guy in chapter 3. And I do get excited about that. That guy in that first million or the first 10 or whatever, or the first 1,000 apartments or 400, whatever it may be. And that is, I think, a unique ability we both have. And I love that part.
Let's talk about patience in terms of real world success stories within your life. So I know that you are already a successful residential real estate guy. You decide at some point and you get introduced to commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And just for people who don't know, commercial real estate is technically classified as obviously strip malls, whether you're, multi-unit family, of 20 or more, or you're a nail salon and, a Kinko's, whatever. So there's all kinds of commercial real estate. And then there's the big boys, the office buildings in downtown, major cities. You get introduced to commercial real estate. I want you to tell the story of your first deal because this speaks to patience and how the long game can change your life forever. And like Scott Shield, one of our mentors, teaches, it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever.
That's an interesting story. So I have a mentor by the name of Tom Rudbeck. I met him when I was 26 and a half years old. And the only reason I met him is I was doing banking at Northwest Bank and Trust. And I said, who's rich? I want to meet them. And they said, you got to meet this guy. But I also said, who is rich, kind, good, and, not working 100-hour work weeks? This guy's traveling the world and he's worth, a lot of money. I meet him on a Cubs trip and we start talking and he starts mentoring me. And for some reason, he just likes me. So we go to Copper Mountain and we negotiate in 2007. Not a good time to buy a $2.5 million strip mall with nail salons and a restaurant, a family restaurant and a hairstyle place. But anyway, 2005, we literally have a beer and negotiate a retail center in 2007 in Copper Mountain on a napkin. And I have at this time about 650 apartments. And this is the crazy thing. I was ready to go. It was a $2.5 million strip mall. I bought the vacant ground around it too for $250,000. So it was a $2.75 million deal. I was able to do it 20% down. Here's the crazy thing. You guys got to have patience and persistence because that deal, I was ready to go. I had the net worth. I had the apartments. All my bankers said, why are you buying retail? Why are you buying triple net? And I said, because my mentor is rich and all he does is bike the world and travel. He skis 82 times a year, 82 times a year. And he lives for 2 months in Europe. He lives in 3 months in Florida. He has this triple net stuff. And I have 665 apartments and I want to jump off the building most days because it was a lot of work. So I go, I want what he has. He has freedom. And believe it or not, it was the 13th bank that said yes. Because it was funny because I had about, at this time, I probably had $20 million in loans at U.S. Bank. And I was cool because the big banks, I thought you want to get it. They don't care about you. Big banks don't care. But my lender at that time, his name was Chad Ulrich. And he came to my pool on a Saturday and he's like, I got to tell you, the bank just doesn't like triple net, doesn't like commercial centers. And I had multifamily was boring and it was easy. I had hundreds of apartments in the Midwest in Illinois and Iowa. And it was the 13th bank that said yes. On that $2.5 million strip mall. 12 banks turned me down. The 13th bank said yes. I still have that asset today, 17 years later. Now it's worth a lot more today and I owe a lot less, but 17 years later, still own that asset. Nice property. Very nice.
Let's paint that picture. Let's use that as a real world example here. So you buy this mall for $2.5 million. And just for context, this may be out of a lot of people's reach, but anybody who's looking to get into commercial real estate, what triple net leases are is the difference between owning a residential apartment building, whether it be 2 units, 3 units, 10 units, or 300, everything is on the landlord. Mm-hmm. Toilet breaks, landlord, management
company,
water bill,
taxes,
roof, snow removal, everything. Triple net lease, alleviates that headache. So the margins are less because it's baked into the deal.
Right.
But triple net lease is where everything is on the tenant.
Yeah.
Not
Depending
the landlord.
on how the lease is structured. But yeah, mostly that's what you're trying to gain. And
Right. And that's where he gets his freedom and skis 82 times a year. And that's what inspires you to now move from this already successful lane to another lane. You buy this $2.5 million property with 30% down, because that's traditional bank loan, correct? When do you cash out the first time, and tell the story of how much money that one property has made you over the last 17 years?
Well, I would say that story on that one's good. Or even like when I bought my first apartment building, this is an interesting story because it was 2003. The apartments was nice because that was a 35-plex. It was a $260,000 down payment, and it cash flowed about $3,500 a month. That's a pretty good deal, right? But that deal alone, about every 4 years, I refinanced, pulled my down payment out, and I was still able to accumulate that $3,500 a month cash flow. Same thing with the strip mall. Now, the strip mall, you're not going to be able to cash out as much and as quickly as the apartments because we weren't able to raise the rents as much. But very similar story. Obviously, the silent gift from the gods in commercial real estate, and you're doing larger deals, is debt reduction. They never talk about the benefit of a forced savings account. When you're paying, your tenants are paying down that debt so much. And I did a 20-year mortgage on that property, 30% down. And over the next 5 or 6 years, yes, it paid down debt. So I refinanced, pulled my money out, and did that over and over and over. And it paid me, at one time, it was paying me that one property, I was cash flowing, $7,000 a month. That was a lot of money back then.
Right.
So I've just continued to do that just on more and more centers and bigger centers. Yeah, as you know, now we bought 3 grocery stores last year. I love Chipotle's. I've got many Buffalo Wild Wings, Walgreens, Starbucks, strip malls, grocery stores, Hy-Vee. University of Iowa is my largest tenant. You want University of Iowa as a tenant. Those type of tenants they take a little less from you than say hundreds and hundreds of apartments. They're not calling you to talk to you. Once you do the lease, it's done. The mortgage or the payment is due on, say, the 1st, it's wired in on the 1st. So triple net was definitely an opportunity to get the freedom. Because my mentor, he literally, you're going to laugh when I say this, he was an accountant. But the reason he got into real estate, he was lazy. He will tell you this today. Today he's like 77 years old. I don't want to work. Right. All he said was, how much money can I make? But I just want to bike. Right. And he's a skier and a biker, and he's biked all the coast. He's like, I just don't want to work. Well, with apartments, triple net is not all 100% passive, but it's a lot more than apartments. Apartments, you're going to get your hands dirty. I've painted a lot of apartments, done a lot of work, and there's a lot of work involved. You got, University of Iowa as your tenant, or medical buildings. 41% of my properties are medical. Those medical assets are awesome when those hospitals pay you. So it was just about a freedom, and that was the big swing.
So we're talking generational wealth. We're talking freedom. We're talking, the accumulation of cash flow, equity, in just getting in the game. Yeah. And now you have no units.
No apartments.
No apartments.
No.
All triple net lease, retail,
100% of my portfolio today is
and you have all the freedom in the world. What are you doing with that freedom these days, and how are you using that to better yourself?
What's crazy is, at one point in time, you're working so many hours, and you're really working on hours for a lot of other people. Right now, I'm really focused on working on myself and getting my head right, my inner wealth right, my head right, my game right. But I'm still managing the portfolio, but I'm obviously spending a lot of time being in rooms with guys that have what I want. Because my stuff doesn't take a lot of work, obviously. It doesn't take a lot of time. I have 97% occupancy today. So now that frees up the availability to look at the next new opportunity, whether that be storm checks or whether it be deals with Commercial Academy or whatever that next step may be.
Right. And now we're opening doors with creative financing.
Right. And there's so many opportunities. Like, no offense, but when I had 985 apartments and 6 different businesses and 200 employees, you're in the grind, baby. You're in the office 60 hours a week, and you're not, at the gym for 2 hours a day,
you're
doing
podcasts
like crap
because
you're eating garbage. Yeah. Now stuff is running itself pretty efficiently, and I'm able to look at other opportunities that, it's just tough. When you're inside the jar, you can't can't look out through the label. When I'm outside the business, I can look in it. I can be a little more optimistic and take on other opportunities that arrive because I have the time and the availability for it.
Well said. As always, we ask for some parting words. You know what the show's all about. We just want some graceful and parting words of wisdom from the one and only Andrew Sallee.
I would say the big thing two things, but the one would be, I just love this, what Ed Milet said was, we just want to live the best life we can ever live. And I don't want to meet the guy on my deathbed that I could have been. Yeah, I mean, I remember exactly how that word that, but on the deathbed, I mean, I don't want to meet the guy I could have been. I'm trying every day. I'm chasing that guy as the best I can. And another one I loved, what Dean just posted. Dean just talked about Lisa and, Dean and Lisa doing the coaching with us. And, I want the family. And Josh has been an amazing mentor. And so have you, had the family. I didn't know family. Honestly, before Sean Martin coming into my life, I didn't really talk about family. It was money, business, money. Now it's way family. We don't even talk business, really. No. We don't do that. But I would say this. Dean said, a line, and I want to take it a little further, where he said, if you hired a private investigator, my wife hired a private investigator, followed me around for a week. At the end of the week, she'd love me more than the day she hired. That opened my eyes a lot. I want to be able to take that a step further, that if a private investigator followed me around for a week, my partners, my mentors, my coaches, right now, I said a year ago, I said, I want to make every decision if Scott, Shield, Sean, and Josh, and we're all sitting in the car. When every decision I make and they approve of that decision. But just chase the best guy you can be and live with integrity, but also proximity is power. A lot of my benefits are, I do not know how, but I've got a circle of friends that are I couldn't have created this, but God has blessed me with. So proximity is power is so, oh my God, proximity is power. That's probably the biggest thing.
It really has been for me as well. Getting to know you obviously changed my life. The fact that you even just mentioned family is beyond flattering because I want that for you. Whether or not you've wanted it for yourself, you maybe don't realize it. And I ran from it for so long. So thank you to my amazing queen and wife, Jen, because I was like, well, I've never seen one work. I've never seen two happily married people with successful kids. So I had this belief around family not being my thing. And I'm so glad my wife hammered that fucking nail in me because it is my greatest accomplishment to date, and it's going to outdo anything I ever accomplished financially. I could, again, I know how to make money. I'm blessed that way, but I don't know how to be the best dad yet. And I have improved dramatically, but there's really no finish line in any journey that we're on. So thank you for coming on this journey with us today and over these last couple of years. And my brother, I cannot wait to see what the future holds. It is always good to sit down with you. We finally got to do this on camera, which, our kids, hopefully our kids, meaning you'll have some someday. That's all right. Old dads are cool now, baby. Yeah, I'm an old dad. So thank you as always for tuning in. We hope that you got something useful out of today's show. As always, we're going to have Andrew's socials in the bio. Follow us. Real Mentors Podcast, always giving you the real, always giving you examples that hopefully give you a gem or say something that can inspire or alter your life. As always, let's get it.